Speak now to Richard Farrer, who's the editor of the Jewish News, one of the newspapers critical of Mr Corbyn. He joins us now from Finchley in North London. Good morning to you. What's your opinion of the intervention by Tom Watson this morning?
Well, it's nothing new. He's been very critical about the party leader in the past, but obviously not in such stark terms. The main thing here, and I think the main thing that Tom Watson is relating to, and the piece in The Guardian omitted, was simply the fact that there is absolutely no acknowledgement on Corbyn's part about his own conduct. He speaks in very broad, sweeping, generalised terms without specifically relating to himself, the things he's done in the past, the people he's related to, the dodgy characters and company he's kept. If he spoke in terms that I think made the people in the Jewish community and wider society feel that he'd understood perhaps where his allegiances had been questionable in the past, that will go a long way to curing the problem we now have.
So is it then, in effect, about the individual, about Jeremy Corbyn, rather than the Labour Party? Is that what you're saying?
Very much so. I mean, of course, anybody that wants to propel themselves to high political office, their CV has to be immaculate, doesn't it? Jeremy Corbyn, of course, has spent the last 30 years as somebody who's been on the backbenches, causing as much trouble as possible. So he's got a few skeletons in his closet. In fact, he's probably got more skeletons than a graveyard, and these are now coming out daily in terms of his irrational, some might say, relationships and the things he's been saying about people. The thing that really upset me a few days ago was that it came out that he called the Hamas murderer of a bride before her wedding day and her father as brother. Now, some sort of understanding as how this language could potentially be a threat if he were to be the leader of our country, I think would go an awfully long way. And using terms like overheated rhetoric to describe the fears of my newspaper, the Jewish News, I don't think is very helpful at all.
So are you calling for Jeremy Corbyn to stand down then? Because from what you're saying, he can never be the person to root out anti-Semitism from the Labour Party.
No, I mean, we've had 3 years of it, so I think he's wholly incapable of. For very simple reasons. There's this acronym that everybody is talking about now, the IHRA, and that's the definition of anti-Semitism, the international standard. And the one thing that he's holding out is this opportunity for Labour Party members to say that Israel is a racist state and Jews are more loyal to Israel than their own country. And the reason he's saying that is because he is guilty of it. He's holding out, and he will hold out. And in September, when the party rubber stamp this, that will be the end, I think, for the Jewish community and the Labour Party under him or any other leader.
Is that because, in your view, Jeremy Corbyn, the man, the individual, is anti-Semitic himself?
I don't know if he's anti-Semitic. I mean, he's an ideologue. He's a lifelong anti-racist. Anti-Semites are drawn to him. Anti-Semites are drawn to the Labour Party under him. And I think he turns a blind eye to it because it catapults him to power in the Labour Party and potentially to power in the country as a whole.
Would you like to see him stand down?
Very much, yes, of course I would. But of course the Momentum Project has taken over Her Majesty's opposition. It's a project now that I think has been lost to the centre and the far left of the Labour Party, I think, under Corbyn or anybody else, are now fully in control of the opposition.
Do you think that you represent all Jewish people? Because there are certainly quite vocal Jewish people who've come forward in support of Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, I mean, I'm the editor of a Jewish newspaper. I speak to readers. I attend synagogues and community centres in my role. I get an email bag full of correspondence. I would say over the last 3 years, 90% share the concerns of the Jewish News, the Jewish Chronicle and the Jewish Telegraph. We all united last week under the United We Stand banner. Of course, there are some useful Jews, I suppose you would call them, who rally around Corbyn's position, and Jeremy Corbyn has sought them out. He went to a Passover Seder with Judas. At every turn, he appears to try and alienate the mainstream by trying to pick out these useful Jews that he feels echoes his position. But no, I'd say 90% of the Jewish community feel he and his Labour Party are an existential threat to Jewish life in Britain.
OK, Richard Farrer, thank you very much.
An article that was published yesterday, there is a problem. But what to do about it? And this is after Deputy Leader Tom Watson told The Observer this morning that the party faced eternal shame if it didn't act on the issue. Well, let's talk to the Labour peer, Lord Adonis, who served under 3 previous Labour leaders and is here this morning. Good to see you. Good to see you in the flesh.
Good morning.
Good morning. Well, it's good to be here at the crack of dawn.
Well, yes, indeed. Thanks for that. Look, I mean, who are you backing on this? I mean, has Tom Watson said the right thing this morning?
Yeah, Tom Watson is absolutely right to say that there's only one way through this, which is to accept the international definition of anti-Semitism. This is a tried and tested definition that's used in most other contexts. What happened at the beginning was that the Labour leadership accepted about 2/3 of the definition. It gets very technical about examples that are appended to the definition, but the examples are crucial because they're the context in which anti-Semitic statements are made which are unacceptable. We're now down to 1 of 11 examples which are given at the end of this definition. Now, that one is important. It relates to being absolutely clear that the State of Israel has the right to exist, which, and if you claim that that's not the case, then that's anti-Semitic, which is, I think, completely correct. You can't claim that you're in some ways
why
not...
the resistance, though, not to employ the entire definition?
The truth is that I think some of the people around Jeremy Corbyn do want to question the existence of the State of Israel. I think this has been the problem all along, actually, is that there is this core of far-left thinking that Israel as a state is illegitimate. And so, as always with these big political battles, they appear to be over very little, but in fact they're over quite a lot. Now, Jeremy Corbyn himself, I do not believe is in that position, and I thought his article in The Guardian yesterday moved almost all of the way towards accepting this international definition, and then what he said is that there'll be a review of the remaining points of difference. Now, my own view is if there's going to be a review, and it's clearly going to lead us to accepting the full international definition, then it should be done quickly rather than drawn out over a long period. So I hope that what Jeremy will do is this week accept the international definition, which is what Tom Watson's calling for. And then the Labour Party can get on with doing what it really has to do at the moment, which is deal with this national crisis. We have a national crisis at the moment of a government which is barely able to conduct negotiations effectively over the future of the country. And
like a true politician, Lord Adonis, you moved on to another issue.
And not spend all our time on resolving this issue, which will need to be resolved over the next few weeks now.
Look, what about people like Reynard, who's tweeted this morning saying the Labour Party NEC have got the anti-Semitic policy right. People must be free and able to criticise the actions of the State of Israel just like we can the actions of any other country. Such criticism is not anti-Semitism.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. No one is questioning the right of people to have a big argument about the policy of the State of Israel. I mean, Prime Minister Netanyahu and the things he's doing, I do not myself support many of them. I don't think anyone's questioning it. It's this issue about the existence of the State of Israel, and that's a very different point. It's very different from saying you don't like the policies. It'd be rather like people saying the difference between criticising Theresa May and saying that England should be abolished. I mean, they are two very fundamentally different propositions, and that's the issue at stake here. But it can be easily resolved, because I do not for a moment believe that Jeremy questions the right of the State of Israel to exist. That being the case, let's get this over with quickly and let's get on to the real things, which, as I say, are concerning the British public.
Can you get over it quickly? We've just had the editor of the Jewish News, wasn't it, Gillian? You spoke to Richard Ferrer, effectively saying that actually the Jewish people within the United Kingdom now cannot turn to the Labour Party, cannot trust Jeremy Corbyn, and he's saying, even potentially if there was a change of leadership now, that they have become so hurt by what the Labour Party has done and is going through in their view, that they just can't trust you anymore.
Well, you should trust people by what they do. And the big test for Jeremy now over the next few weeks, but as I say, I hope it's the next few days that he resolves this, is what he does. And what he needs to do is very straightforward. Accept the international definition of anti-Semitism, make clear that there's no question of Labour being out of line with other institutions in the way it deals with this issue.
But in terms of, forgive me for interrupting, but in terms of this issue, is it that simple? In the sense that these options have been there all along. This has been going on for 3 years actually now. He hasn't taken that line, and if he takes it now, isn't it almost too late? Aren't these people going to say, well, that's disingenuous now, you're only doing it because there's pressure, and actually we don't believe your fundamental principles are different?
I've tried to be very frank with you. I think there is a problem at the top of the Labour Party. I've been very clear about it. I think there are some people in the National Executive Committee of the Labour Party and at the top of the party who have been struggling with an acceptable definition of anti-Semitism. I think there is a problem. The way to deal with it, though, is to move the full way and accept it without any equivocation. Now, if Jeremy...
Is that something that you've discussed with Jeremy Corbyn?
Well, I haven't discussed it directly, but what Tom Watson is saying today, I think, represents the views of almost all members of the Labour Party. The thing is, I also believe that it represents the views of Jeremy Corbyn himself, because Jeremy himself, who I do know well, I haven't discussed this with him directly, but I know him well, Jeremy is not anti-Semitic. He does not believe that the State of Israel has no right to exist. He's not in that position at all. The issue, I think, and I understand it in politics, is that some of those people with whom he's acted in the past have taken a different view, and my own view is that he's, to some extent, sat on the sidelines. The thing about leadership is you have to lead. This is a supreme test of leadership for Jeremy, and I hope he rises to it.
But this issue is associated with him. Do you think that he has now tainted the Labour Party? Because Jewish people are saying that they actually don't want him to lead the Labour Party. That's not going to be their natural home anymore if he is still the leader.
Well, the crucial test now is how he leads. He has a huge leadership challenge now, and we're all willing him to do the right thing, which is to accept the international definition of anti-Semitism, make clear there is no question of Labour, either in opposition or in government, in putting any doubt at all in the public mind about the right of the State of Israel to exist. And then we can move on to dealing with this really serious domestic political crisis we've got at the moment with Theresa May's disintegrating government.
Lord Adonis, good.